Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Life from the Inside Out with Kris. Before we begin with Kris's unparalleled metaphysical content, I know that many of you watching have felt a sense of being ungrounded, unhinged, or out of balance in these times. I know. I've felt this way too. Kris's teachings have similarities to popular ideas such as the law of attraction and the secret. The difference is that Kris's knowledge goes even deeper into reality creation and helps resolve many of the problems identified with the law of attraction. The information he shares helps restore grounding and that sense of balance that many of us have lost in these times. If you're ready for the law of attraction and secret 2.0 and want to be a part of this fantastic community, then hit that like button, subscribe, drop a comment below, and press the bell icon so that you get notified when Kris releases cool, new metaphysical content. Kris also offers life-changing online seminars, private sessions, and mentoring sessions, which are all linked in the description below. Glad you're here with us, and let's jump into it. And welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Life from the Inside Out with Kris. And today we're doing another one of our panel episodes. This is part 2. And earlier we were talking a lot about the imagination and some of the connections between what might happen if we block this imagination in childhood, and then as we grow older as adults, how we can utilize the imagination in combination with the feelings and emotions to create. And I'm looking forward to seeing what else Kris has to say about that. And let's get started.
Where would your world be without the use of the imagination? Could you actually answer that? In fact, who would you be without your imagination? Would you even be?
That's what I'm thinking. I don't think you would even exist. What?
Well, you imagine yourself here.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think it's an impossible question because you have to use your imagination to imagine yourself without
Into being. Yeah.
without being.
So you cannot be without imagining yourself being. Bottom line. So the imagination, in whatever way you look at it, is extremely important to everything you do in three-dimensional physical reality and beyond. Because even in dream time, even in life after life, you still utilize it, but in a different capacity, in a capacity that is much deeper, wider, and greater than what you allow yourself to imagine in physical reality. And that is not uncommon because in physical reality, you naturally constrain it. You hold it together much more tightly simply because of the demands that are put upon you by the physical senses. Because you need to focus in a very specific pattern in order to maintain your connection with physical experience, physical reality. But even your dream experiences can show you that there is much more outside the field of physical electromagnetic reality. You have a completely different field of electromagnetic existence within dream time itself, where worlds are literally created on a whim, which is its true nature. Your physical reality is also created in the same way, but it is more meticulously done, more concentrated upon, because you have very specific things you want to experience. You also have very specific things you want to experience in dream time. But because of the nature of dream time, the simultaneous nature of dream time, then you can have a greater and broader use of the imagination because you experience and explore realities simultaneously. Here, in physical reality, you must compartmentalize moment after moment after moment in linear fashion, which also requires quite a formidable feat of imagination to literally condense reality in a manner that goes into moment to moment in a linear like fashion. Whilst outside of that field, you experience multiple, not just moments, multiple layers of moments simultaneously. You are not hindered or restrained by time and space, nor by certain laws of physics, like in your physical reality, one of which is gravity. It does not necessarily have that kind of an influence in dream time. Your own dreams will attest to that, wherein you can fly, you can hover above you can go through walls and floors and ceilings. You can instantly be in one place, and in the bat of an eye, you are in another location. So there are different uses of the imagination, and they have different effects. And once you tap into those potentials, those possibilities, just like you, Ellen, are contemplating returning to your blog about the tarot. So that requires an envisioning of that future blog. So you straddle present and future together. Just like Dan, he is writing. So he has to straddle the present moment and the future where his words written down will have an effect. Any one of you and every one of you do that, but you simply are not trained to pay attention. And of course, because you are not Sherlock Holmes. Just a little bit of training, a little bit of observation, looking out for patterns. That is what your scientists do. This is what your detectives do, your researchers do. They look for even the slightest little patterns. And then it begins to make sense in a different way. And your lives, believe it or not, are full of patterns. Just become very conscious of what you do from the moment you awaken to the moment you go to sleep, and you will see that a great portion of your time is doing the same thing you did the day before, and the day before that, and the day before that. And your society, your culture, and present civilization is also involved in the same kind of patterning. And it is expected that the good citizens, whether they pay taxes or not, will comply with certain patterns so as to keep an even keel and allow the process to unfold. Mind you, every once in a while, someone needs to have the keel kicked over just to spice things up. But the main thing is about looking at the patterns in your life. And we are not limiting it to just the patterns of physical expression. Look at your thought pattern. You might even notice that at certain times of the day, you entertain certain similar kinds of thoughts. And at other times of the day, you entertain a certain other set of thoughts. And those thoughts may in themselves be cyclical. Some of them become obsessive. You begin to worry. You worry in cycles. But it would be a good thing to keep in mind that, first of all, worrying is an extremely excessive waste of good imagination. And secondly, though worry has never, ever, ever brought about a beautiful tomorrow, it certainly has ruined many a beautiful todays. And that also belongs to the realm of the imagination. So you are the ones who determine how your lives unfold by what you imagine yourselves doing, what you imagine yourselves thinking, what you imagine your tomorrows to be, what you imagine your yesterdays brought you. If you can part the seas of yesterdays and tomorrows and concentrate on the todays, you might be able to leave the desert into fertile land of consciousness. So we might have just given you a little hint of the meaning behind that particular episode in that particular book. Might there be inquiries or comments? Please feel free.
Well, Kris, one of the things that was occurring to me just before you began to talk about dreams was the way that dreams can be so helpful for us to embrace more imaginative ways of living our life in the moment. We're so used to living our lives like you were talking about in particular ways and particular patterns. And if we're paying attention to the dream activity that's going on, I think that can help to stimulate us to move in different directions too, which I think is one of its nice usages.
Indeed, it is. And as you explore your own inner realities in this particular way, you might be surprised to make a connection between your daily living existence and what you do in dream states. Your connection between the two is much, much closer than you can possibly imagine. Your daily waking existence is an excursion into a particular, we will just say, dimension of dream time. You are always dreaming. Here you are dreaming and imagining yourselves in physicality. When you go to sleep at night, you imagine yourselves in non-physicality, what you call dream time. And paying attention to your dreams can bring about incredible benefits. Many of your great scientific discoveries came about from people working on an issue, stop worrying about it, go to sleep, and in their dreams, they are offered the solution to their dilemma. A new invention comes about, a new medicine, a new mathematical formula, a new engineering feat. It binds your world together into a multi-dimensional, beautiful experience you refer to as human life. But your human life is not bound by your genealogy, nor is it bound by your chromosomes or your DNA. You are the living essence of your life. You are the only one then who can determine whether your life is going to be dictated by other people's suggestions and opinions, or would you prefer that your opinions about yourself are more important than other people's opinions about you? When you are not grounded in that particular area, you will seek validation from other people because you might be insecure, you might be anxious, and so many other things. So it seems to you logical that other people will know what to do about your life much better than you. But we say nay. We say you are the best suited individual to determine what is best for your life. Does that make sense to you?
It does. And I know frequently you've shared with us that one of the things that happens is we get communications from that inner us in terms of maybe we might call a future us. And so if we're listening to other people instead of listening to ourselves, we're not being drawn forward into those possibilities that are there by, I guess I'll call them maybe versions of us who are already living those possibilities.
Indeed, if your mind is filled with the opinions of other people about how your life should be according to them, you have no time to capture those voices from your own self that may have a much more concrete suggestion about how you can literally follow into the footsteps of your own empowerment. You will be seeking to be empowered by others, and that never ever works. No one has ever been successfully fulfilled or empowered by the opinions of others. Please feel free to continue. Otherwise, Dan will have to edit out all this dead air.
So, Kris, I noticed that in doing an exercise wherein you have a desire and use your imagination, use your thoughts and your emotions, things could be moving in that direction. And then usually there's a challenge, I noticed, that needs to be overcome. And that's where I think some of us get stuck. Can you explain?
Indeed. And we fully understand and appreciate your inquiry. Might we say that sometimes challenges do not necessarily need to be overcome as much as they might simply need to be addressed, because the challenge will bring up certain beliefs, whether they are related to hesitations or self-doubt or second-guessing yourself, and these will come up. So you can utilize the AAA method very nicely. Acknowledge it, address it, and then accept yourself for the creative and lovely creatures that you all are. And often such a process can bring about a quick resolution to the issue. If other little things come about, then you can literally request what other lingering challenges are there so that you can address them as well. And this will very often resolve the situation. You can also request your dreams to bring about an understanding, or even a discussion with a close friend. Not that you need to live by their opinion, but that you can get an insight. Sometimes during a conversation, certain words may stand out more than others, and these might be communications as well, for you to understand the deeper processes that you are involved in. So, leaving yourself wide open for all possible communications will bring about a much better resolution. Does that make sense to you?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
And one should never put themselves down simply because there might be what appears to be a little glitch that might be part of your adventure to reinforce and strengthen the validity of your own being. And that is often part of the issue, the validity of self. Do you follow?
Yes, that definitely makes a lot of sense to me. Mhm.
Please feel free to continue. Did the storm kick you into the house, Alan?
No, my batteries died. I had to come plug my laptop in.
Indeed. No, please, anyone have another question or comment? Feel free to do so.
One of the things that occurred to me as you began to talking about the imagination is without this type of an exploration, in other words, a metaphysically leaning type of an exploration, it's so typical for us to think of the imagination in such a different way, to not even consider the effect it has as what you've called one of the mechanisms of consciousness, how it is used to mold consciousness to actually become our experience. So this whole exploration really is such a foundational aspect of understanding the concepts that you share with us here.
Indeed. Our reference to these as engines of consciousness, technologies. Any kind of engine needs multiple mechanisms. So in this case, you have your imagination, your feelings, and your emotions, and they set about into motion the great creative processes of the universe, in this case, YOU verse. So these are fundamental, primordial components. They are found in all creatures to varying degrees. Of course, a mouse will not have the same kind of imagination, of emotions, and feelings as you, but it will have that according to its particular capacities. They all have. Now, some might argue, well, okay then, trees, rocks, mountains, lakes, they don't have. Of course, not according to certain perceptions, but because they are also units of consciousness, they are consciousness. They have their own components as well. They would not be able to imagine themselves as mountains or trees or rivers or clouds in conjunction with your own creativity, because you live in a collaborative universe. So you need rain and water. The clouds collaborate and bring that to you. Does that make sense to you?
Yes, it absolutely does. It's, this exploration really paints such a very broad and detailed picture about how our experience comes about and flows for us. It's an exploration that I think is so very well worth anybody's time to involve themselves in, regardless of how they started. It's going to lead to these deeper types of questions and then some form of getting these types of answers. So yeah, it's just such a great thing to do.
Indeed. The master who sculpted David,
Michelangelo.
indeed. So he was able to see David in the block of marble. So he simply cut out or chipped away that which did not belong to the vision. So that requires literal master capacity imagination. Artists, composers, literally everyone utilizes the imagination. Whether you recognize it or not is irrelevant. You all use it. You would not even get out of bed without the imagination. In fact, you would not even have beds, nor would you have houses, nor would you have cities.
Isn't that your illustration of the David chipping away to find David within the block of marble? Isn't that also kind of an allusion to how you reach for the wisdom of the inner self? I mean, your imagination sparks inspiration, you become inspired with an idea, you want to pursue it. And of course, your emotions are jump started then, but you reach for something in your inner self, which I think that's what you allude to when you talk about the feelings.
Indeed. Without that, you would have a great amount of difficulty even in formulating words, because you had an idea of what you want to say, even though you might not know what the last word would be. But you have to start speaking, and then the rest of the sentences and the paragraphs and the chapters seem to flow out from that tiniest little idea of something you want to say. But it is all there, ready to go.
It is an inner knowledge and inner wisdom that you reach for, and sometimes it's.
And there are many times when you might be surprised at what you say yourself, thinking perhaps, how did I know that? Where does that come from? Now, some people want to say and claim that nothing you say can absolutely be original because it had all been said and done before. And there might be a grain of truth in that, but at the same time, no one has been able to quite say it and think it and live it the way you do. You have a signature that way. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but if that were really true, then there would be no new musical compositions being made and no new, I mean, you could read a book and you can say, oh, this is kind of based on, say, the Odyssey or something, but it's a different,
Indeed.
it's a different
It is a
movement. It's a
different take.
different
Literally
take on.
an alternative unfolding of that particular story. The same can be said with Hollywood.
Yes.
That original movies stopped being produced 20 years ago. Everything is a rehash. But it might not necessarily be quite the same. The plots or storylines may sound familiar, but there are always new twists.
Yeah. Moon Knight.
Well, no one has quite done a talking hippopotamus like that.
Yeah, I'm telling you.
Now, might there be another last question or comment? Please feel free.
One of the things that came to my mind, or actually the thing that came to my mind as you and Ellen were speaking just now, was the whole idea of our own personal experience. And that, I think, is where the uniqueness really comes in. It's that regardless of how something's been done before, this is our own unique experience of that particular thing. So it has to be new, not only for us, but then for all of consciousness, because our perspective has never been had before.
Indeed. Imagine, pardon the pun, but imagine, if you will, that no one has ever tasted vanilla ice cream. And let us be very, very specific. French vanilla ice cream.
Canadian
One
French.
person tastes it, and everyone says, well, we know now what it tastes like. Would that be pertinent? No, because you would all want to taste it because you will taste it in a manner different than the other person. It will have a different significance to you. And that is what makes vanilla ice cream so popular. So every little perception that you have is unique and different from the other individual. That is why it is said that you create your reality, not that your reality is created by someone else. It is you who create your reality through your experience and your perceptions and your perspectives. So you give life to yourselves in an immeasurably wonderful and imaginative way. And may we encourage you all to continue imagining yourselves as more than anything you were before. And with that, we return Joseph to your lovely selves and thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Kris.
Thank you, Kris.
Thanks, Kris.
Thanks, Kris. Thanks for watching, and if you would like to leave a question for Kris, drop it in the comments below. Myself, Serge, or someone from the Kris team will be checking and may use them to drive the discussion, put them in future episodes. So if you'd like to interact with the Kris community, feel free. Put your questions below, and we'd love to hear from you, and see you again next time.